How's it going, guys? Right, these are the things we're going to be talking about. The new scenarios, the Dwarves of Craft Mountains, the new movement rules, and the new battle stress system, and all the other stuff as well. Right then, these are some pictures of the scenario ambush we've been working through. It's nearly done. I don't have much to say other than it's going quite well. We're going to be starting working on more scenarios in the next few weeks. And that's it really. The Dwarves of Craft Mountains. Right, their army list is going well. I'm still working on that, and that's on track. But what I really want to talk about is the dwarf prints. Now, last time I talked about the dwarves, I showed you a dwarf print where you could change his beards, his arms, his armament, some of his clothing. Well, anyway, I've built on top of that now, and I've added far more combinations, and I've nearly completed that print for a basic dwarf infantry unit. And here they are. As you can see, all I've done is I've used that frame or that print, and I've just changed all the combinations around to create all these different types of dwarves you can see in front of you. That means on their print sheets they're going to look completely different from each other, hopefully. Probably not all going to look completely individual, because it's quite faffy actually to do that and to make sure they all match up behind, but otherwise you can mix them up and it's going to look really good when the print sheets are ready. The new movement rules. Right, in the last video I made, I sort of touched upon the fact I was thinking of changing the movement rules, and the reason why is that there's a lot of faffing around to do. Say if you wanted to go over a bridge, a unit has to reform, it has to pivot, it has to do a right or about turn, it has to do, and to be quite honest with you, a lot of games which are like free planes also have to do exactly the same thing, and I just don't see the point, because a unit is full of individual bright warriors who would just naturally slim down. So that was one reason. The other reason is that I think a lot of people play, skirmish games, smaller skirmish games, like the fact that they can actually pick up pieces and just move them to where they want. And I want to see if I can incorporate that more into free planes. So these are some of the basics of these new rules. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because obviously it's a YouTube video and I don't want it to last forever. So I'm just going to talk about it very sort of roughly and loosely, just to give you a general idea. So here we go. As you can see, with the little black dots, that's the middle front of a unit. Now basically I'm working on the premise that all units have a leader. If it's not an official leader or not, basically they're following one guy. And if they weren't, they wouldn't really be a unit, they'd just be a rabble, they'd just be wandering off and doing whatever they want. But generally they're following one guy, and that's your middle front. So I'm still going to be using point to point, but now it's worked out the middle front. That's the first principle. So, to move a piece, all you would do is plot out a new direction for the piece and move its middle front there. But if we look at the goblin unit, and this is where it gets a bit more clever, the unit of goblins have actually done an about turn and moved straight behind it. And what they've actually done there is done two manoeuvres in one. One, they've done an about turn, and two, they've moved away. Now, the cost of the about turn is actually part of the normal move, because if you think about it, in an about turn, all the figures in the unit would turn round instantly. That's not what costs the move. What the cost the move is the leader unit, or the leader piece, or the leader in the unit actually moving through the centre of the unit, finding his new front, and then moving the unit away. So you're actually doing two manoeuvres in one there, just by making one move, and that is why point-to-point movement is better than the other movement, because you're actually cutting out a lot of bullshit just moving units about. Now what we can see here is units pivoting or turning round, and again what they do is they don't pivot in the traditional sense where you do it at the far corner and then you swing it round. They actually pivot from the middle front, because basically the new philosophy behind movement is that the unit always tries to follow its leader, and the leader is usually in the middle of the unit, and they'll always form up behind the leader. So if he turns, the unit will eventually turn behind him. That's probably why they used to stick the sword in the air and stick the sword in a direction, because then the unit would know which direction he wanted. So they're always forming up behind the leader. So when you actually pivot, that's where you pivot from, the middle front. So you can do all the manoeuvres you did before, you just do them in a slightly different way. This is where I hit a bit of a problem. You see, the problem is, with line units, if they turn sharper than 45 degrees, right or left, they're actually getting a lot of free movement because the far corners in the opposite direction that it's turning actually get to move a lot further than, say, the middle front where you're actually, working out the measurements. So my solution was, if a unit like this turns 45 degrees sharper left or right, roughly, then it has to halve its movement. So that way you're actually getting two moves in one again. So you're doing a pivot and then you're actually moving away, but you're actually doing it in a realistic way as well. So again, it's I think a really good solution. Now in Free Planes V2, you can actually split turn. So if you've got a column and it wants to go around a corner, instead of getting that massive pivot swing round, what you do is you split it, which is far more realistic, which the unit would actually do. With the new point-to-point rules with units using, all they do, if they actually end up turning on a point and the unit still goes over that point, that is where they split. And it's as simple as that, other than you just have to fill in those models. So it's even simpler again. Now here is a unit of goblins with a problem. It wants to cross over a bridge or a narrow space, but yet it's in the wrong formation to just simply move around. Now, forgetting all the rest of pivoting and reforming and all this, that and the other, what it should be able to do is just move straight over, because units are not bricks. You read a lot of rule systems and they're just these bricks which don't move, don't do anything. You have to spend loads of movement to get them in the shape you want, and it's just a nightmare basically, and it's an arty-farty process. My argument is that units are more like sponges. What they would do is they would naturally slim down, they'd use their initiative and think, there's a bridge, I'm going to fall behind this guy here, and then when I get over the bridge, I'm going to reform back into the unit, and that's, in the new rules, that's what they're going to do from now on. Here's another scenario which is a bit like the bridge scenario. This unit of goblin wants to charge him, but it can't because it's too long. Under the old rules and many other rule systems, you can't do this. Warhammer Fantasy, you wouldn't be able to get in that, you'd have to wait there and that'd be it. But what's going to happen if that unit says, I'm going to charge, is the leader of that unit suddenly going to stop charging him because his sidemen can't? Do you think he cares? Or does he think, my sidemen can use their initiative and sort of fall behind, and then when space becomes available, the unit can form slowly back into its original shape? And that's precisely what happens in the new rules. Now, under the new rules, point-to-point movement is going to be broken up into two different forms of movement. It's going to have units, which basically have to keep the formation unless they need to change it to do something, but they'll always change it back. And then there's going to be loose moving groups, and loose moving groups are things like monster units, skirmishers, chariots, pieces which don't bother to keep a formation. They change their formation as well, but they don't get the advantages, say, units get. And this is a group of ogres who basically want to absolutely murder this little hero on his own. But what's happened under the old rules, and I have to say many other rule systems, they all just sort of line up in a long line and wait their turn politely to get into combat. Now, that's a bit strange if you ask me, because they should really just want to get in there and pound him, and they wouldn't conform to doing this at all. What would really happen would be this. And as you can see, the ogres have just gathered in around and now pounding the hell out of that hero. But that's what would happen. The ogres wouldn't just politely line up in a line and wait their turn into combat. So that's the way it's going to be in the new rules. So that's the basics of the new movement rules. I'd really like to hear your feedback on this, guys. So, just to keep me in check, because I could be completely wrong. Now, I'm not saying these rules are perfect. They actually bring up a load of new problems, because when you do politely line up in a little line, you don't go onto someone else's flanks. Now, under these new rules, you do, and that brings up a whole new questions like, should you negate, should you do extra battle stress if you go onto someone's ranks? And I think you should. So... But we're going to game test this, and we've got an entire year to get them right. But it'd be really, really, really good to get your thoughts and feedback on it. It's just to try and make the game more realistic, because as far as I'm concerned, that would happen. the latter wouldn't happen, where you line up in a nice little polite line to get into combat. The new battle stress system. Now I've got to say, guys, out of all the systems in the game, the battle stress system has received the highest praise. People seem to really like that system, so I don't want to screw with it too much. And it is a good system. It took me about 3 or 4 years to write and perfect and game test and whatnot. So you know, it is a good system as it is, as it stands. But I still think there's a lot of mental arithmetic in there, and there's a lot of sort of remembering figures, and you know, I can make it better. And I was racking my brains for ages, and suddenly I came up with this dice idea, and this is why I have these dice here. And I was thinking about making another game and just having this really simple system whereby you'd have pass dice and fail dice, you know, so a 4, 5 and 6 would be a pass, and anything lower than that would be a fail. So the 4 dice would be a pass, and that 3 would be a fail. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, what about swapping? So when you build up battle stress, what about just taking a battle stress dice instead? And then suddenly I started expanding this idea, and I came up with this complete new system. But the great thing about this new system is that it uses the same maths as the old system, so it's exactly the same system, but it's got like a different interface. You sort of use it in a different way, and it's more inclusive, and it's a lot easier to use because you're counting up pools of dice and you're rolling off against each other. So it's a really, really good system. And with it using a lot of the same mechanics as the old system, I don't have to change anything. I just have to rewrite the original rules and then tweak the book throughout the book. So it's a really, really good upgrade, is this, you know? And the game testers really like this idea as well. So that's definitely going in Free Planes v3. And that's it, guys, really, apart from 2 other little points. One, a little bit of news. This is all pie in the sky stuff, but I met a guy called Dave, and this is his site, Museum Miniatures, and he's basically a sculptor, and he makes models for a living. And he downloaded my rules, and we started talking, and then we started sort of flirting with the idea of making Free Planes a solid game. So it wouldn't be print and play; it would be a solid game. Which I don't know, because all my sort of plans for Free Planes it evolves around it being a print and play game, you know. But we'll see, you know. But it's nice to think that, you know, it could be a physical game in the future at some point. Anyway, that's one thing. Another thing is that, you know, going on the internet, you meet all sorts of weird and wonderful people, and one of them, which is more wonderful than weird, obviously, is New Icon. And he's just been a real good friend over the years and really supportive. He's also got his own game out called Grom. It's like a dark, old world fantasy skirmish game, and it's really, really good. I've read the rules. It's really good. I'll leave a link underneath for you guys to check it out. He's also got a YouTube channel as well, so he does loads of little groovy reviews and all this, that and the other. So yeah, so thanks mate, and yeah, that's it guys. Thanks for watching and take care. Bye bye.